It's the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network. Recorded from Detroit, Michigan, and Jacksonville, Florida. The Infectious Groove Podcast is your source for jammy jams, album reviews, and the best in-depth music discussion. Thanks for joining us. Now here are your hosts.
Hello, my name is Russ, and yes, you are in fact listening to the latest episode of the Infectious Groove Podcast. And as we get into the second half of the episode, we have a topic that is pretty close to my heart because it has changed a massive amount, even in the time that I've been around appreciating music, and that is musicians, the rights to music, and how it seems like every 2 minutes we keep hearing somebody huge has sold the rights to their music. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we feel about what's going on and what we think the future is going to hold. And by we, I mean the long-awaited return of our friend Dayton from the Docking Bay podcast. And first of all, welcome back to the show, brother.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Second of all, this episode is being recorded when imminent destruction is occurring. The big weather event that everyone is scared about all over the U.S. is about to occur right after this episode is recorded. And from what I understand, and I'm being serious now, the event is supposed to be an over the weekend thing, right? Like by early next week, everybody's supposed to be fine.
I know around here it's supposed to pass as far as the snow and ice and everything is supposed to be through my area by tomorrow night, but it's still supposed to be only single-digit temperatures Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, that's what, even down here, having moved from Detroit myself, I know you're still up just a couple hours north of where I used to be. Even down here in North Florida, it's supposed to get into like the low to early or low to mid 20s. Around Christmas Day. Yeah. And as you might imagine, people are making out like it's the end of times, like I understand, like having grown up in Detroit, and I've been to where you're at several times for work and personal. And, I get that you might want to go grab an extra jug of milk or an extra loaf of bread or some other things. Like if it looks like there's a real chance you might get snowed in.
Right.
But if it's just cold though,
Well, I think with us, it's the fact that it's been raining most of today, and the temperature is going to drop so quickly that it's just going to turn to ice, and then we're going to get snow on top of the ice.
No.
So,
You and the people in your area, I get it. But I mean to tell you, my fiance and I went to the gym yesterday, and it's still in the 60s here right now. But we went to the gym, and we went to the grocery store afterwards, just for like our regular shopping trip. And people were in there. Like, I'm sure if you go to your local Meijer, it's going to look like World War III. Like people are going to be elbowing each other and like trying to, right? That's
actually surprising. My wife was there and she said it wasn't too bad. I guess we're getting used to it. I don't know.
Good. But yeah. Yesterday here, people were like acting like, and I was like, but it's just going to be cold though. Like it, you know what I mean? Like here, we're not getting a bunch of rain. But anyways. So having said that, hopefully by the time everybody is hearing this episode, that is all a thing of the past. So Dayton, I know you've been on the show before, and we have appeared on your show, and yes. We've read plenty of awesome feedback that you've given us on this show. However, I always give everybody a chance just to say, hey, if you like, what Dayton has to say, go check his show out. So if someone goes and checks out the Docking Bay 77 show, what are they going to hear?
Well, I'm the host, and I have a bunch of nerd friends that love music and movies and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And, we have lots of good topics. We have covered everything from our top 7 arcade games, and we just did an episode on Muppet Christmas Carol. And we just dropped an episode for Spielberg's birthday where we covered a couple of his movies. So we cover a lot of different things, and we try to have a lot of fun. And there's definitely a lot of teasing going on between the group because a lot of us have been friends for a long time. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a blast. And I'm lucky to have a lot of friends around me that are movie nerds and music nerds, and just have a good time talking about that stuff. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. And we're always looking for new ideas. So we've actually have a couple of episodes coming up that were suggested by listeners too. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's rad. See, I'm unfamiliar with co-hosts knowing each other really well so they can tease each other all the time. I wouldn't know anything about that. I actually, not long ago, Michelle and I had a conversation offline where we were like, do you think that we've lost listeners because they maybe heard the first time and they were like, God, these people don't even like each other. Like, why do I want to, I'm like, probably, like I'm sure somebody has listened and been like, good Lord, I don't want to hear people argue,
Right.
But anyways, no, I get exactly what you're saying. So in short, if you like the vibe of what we do here on our show and you'd like to expand it out, they do cover music on the Docking Bay. I went on there to cover Nirvana Unplugged and had a great time on that episode. But if you would like to expand your listening out past just music and listen to more pop culture stuff, then go look for Docking Bay 77 podcast and subscribe to them. And then you guys put out, do you dabble in YouTube at all, or is everything audio right now?
Not yet, but I'm working on that.
Right on. Gotcha. Yeah, it took me forever to get into the YouTube game. And then when I did, now I'm like putting out a bunch of content on there. So it's it can be addicting.
I'm sure.
Anyways, Dayton is going to be here with us through the whole episode, and then in the second half, help us out with that discussion about the future of music rights. We don't have a ton of feedback to share from last week's episode, but I've got a couple of things I want to share, so let's get into that.
Feedback, John.
Don't worry about that. Right. There's rock and roll me without feedback.
So I've got two different comments from our YouTube channel, which I usually don't read a ton, but I recently did a video on that channel on 5 artists that I feel got better with age. And at least there were some picks for me that I didn't think were all too obvious. Like I included the one that I think is the most obvious is the Beatles. Like I think most people can agree, that they got better with age.
Oh, absolutely.
But I had a couple of different comments on some that I was surprised about. And one of which was I thought that REM got much better in their later career. And I know I didn't realize until I put that video out and somebody commented that there are people that feel strongly in the other direction. So
I'm sure.
Yeah. So the first comment that we got was from a viewer of the channel, and he said, REM, how can you not love the first album more than anything that they ever did? Their late 90s output is flat out embarrassing. Now, I do understand that. I can see a band going up and down. I just feel like I always say this about Pink Floyd. Everyone knows and loves the Dark Side of the Moon, but the 7 records before that, I feel like they were getting better as a band incrementally until where they could make the Dark Side of the Moon, right?
Right.
And that's how I feel about REM. Like I don't discount any of the early work, but I feel like the whole time they were becoming the band that would be able to make Out of Time and Automatic for the People. Yeah.
There's I know with Rush was the same way. I mean, they went through a lot of different things before they did Moving Pictures, and to this day, I think Moving Pictures is still the best album they ever made. And even their later stuff, they kind of went back to it. But yeah, there's a lot of bands that get better. They try things out, and their later stuff's not going to sound like the earlier stuff. But yeah, you grow with age, and hopefully you get better at what you're doing, and just become practiced at the music you're doing.
Right on. Yeah, that's how I feel. And I also, in this next comment, is I like when artists challenge themselves and take chances. And I know a lot of people don't like, I don't want to say people hate it, but I know a lot of people don't love it. And U2 was one that I picked because, again, I like the early U2 stuff, but and I love Joshua Tree and Rattle and Hum, but I just the balls on that band to release Octoon Baby when they did,
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
And then the sheer audacity to have it be as good as it was. So that's why I put U2 in there. Brandon left a comment and said, I have mixed feelings about that U2 pick. Octoon Baby is great, but in my opinion, they were never able to replicate the Joshua Tree, which again, in zero disrespect to Brandon, but it sounds to me like he wanted Joshua Tree again, which is not what I want. Right.
Right.
And then he says, also, I have a topic suggestion for the channel. Great albums that killed a band as an artist, or they could never recreate the same magic, which I could see doing that video.
Right. Yeah. Because there's plenty of bands that peak and then never quite get back to that,
Right. Mm-hmm. Regarding last week's episode, which was the review of Sturgill Simpson's album, A Sailor's Guide to Earth, our friend Aaron writes in and says, another great review. And there's still a chance that Michelle and I could be being friends is back on the table on our shared stance on Christmas. Hashtag Michelle is great, which is Michelle just hates Christmas and everything about it. And I'm more or less indifferent to Christmas. Like I like it, I don't hate it, but apparently Aaron shares an opinion with Christmas. Our friends, the Itch Rocks, were the people that were on with us last week to do that Sturgill Simpson review. And over the course of the episode, I was telling them that although I really appreciated them giving his third album a try, that they should check out his fourth record because it's like a fuzz rock type of thing. And they said, to follow up after a rough day, the Itch can confirm that Sturgill Simpson's Sound and Fury is indeed a boss album. Favorites are Remember to Breathe and Make Art Not Friends. Somehow it sounds like a Tarantino soundtrack, and Metric on the same album, which is, have you heard any of Sturgill's stuff, Dayton?
Well, actually, it's kind of funny. I'd never heard of him until I started listening to you guys. And then shortly after, because I'd heard you drop his name from time to time, and a friend of mine actually let me borrow the record that you guys reviewed last week. So yeah, I've listened to that record, and I kind of fall in line with Itch Rock guys that I hear the talent in there, and I hear the songwriting, but ultimately it's not my jam. Mm-hmm. So and I'm okay. And I, like I said, I'm trying to grow as a music listener and appreciate the effort and not necessarily bag on stuff. But yeah, it's good for what it is.
Did you get a chance to check out that fourth one, Sound of Fury?
Unfortunately, not just yet, but it's on my list.
Literally, just throw on one song, because now that you've heard the third one, throw on one song, and I dare you to not have an explicative reaction.
Okay.
What the? There's no way this is the same person. Like it's. You won't believe the difference. It's insane.
Right, fantastic.
Sean and Chris write in and they say, we're always a fan of your show, but this week's episode has to be the best or one of the best of the year. And then the Itch Rocks tagged onto that and said, thank you so much. Infectious Groove is always putting out great stuff, and it's an honor to be considered among the top of the top tiers. So that is a little bit of the feedback we had from last week. And now we'll move on to our next segment, our jammies. For me, I heard two songs in public recently that I don't think you hear all that often. And it just caused me to go on a huge tear with both of these bands. And I'm not breaking any new ground here. This is what most people would call overplayed music. But I think it was in a bar the other day, and I heard The Wizard by Black Sabbath playing.
Oh, nice.
And man, I love The Wizard so damn much. Like, I got into Ozzy era Sabbath by my older sister playing Iron Man for me once on a 7-inch, the 45 for Iron Man. So I went out and got the album Paranoid. And for the longest time, I love that album so much that I didn't even go forward or backward. Like, I just listened to that and never dug into anything else. And then, I don't know, 10 years after that, I heard Zakk Wylde, who at the time was Ozzy's guitar player, did a cover of The Wizard that I just loved. And I was like, okay, well, now I have to go back and, hear the original. And so anyways, ever since then, The Wizard has always been one of my favorite Sabbath songs. So because of that, I just went on a tear and have been listening to a bunch of Ozzy era Sabbath. And I don't really, for years, I didn't even bother listening to the Dio era of Sabbath. I feel like, am I wrong on that? I feel like if you hear Dio first, you're Dio loyal. And if you hear Ozzy first, you're Ozzy loyal.
Well, see, we actually covered that debut record from Sabbath, and I didn't get into it until later. I was lucky enough to have an older brother who listened to Sabbath, but I was more of the solo Ozzy fan. Okay. And I heard Iron Man. I heard, a lot of that era, like Paranoid, especially in my garage band back in college. We covered Paranoid. But it wasn't until recent years that I went back and listened to all the catalog, hitting the Ozzy era, hitting the Dio era. So I was more of a Ozzy fan before I was ever a Sabbath fan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I didn't even think about that being in play too. Every time the subject of Sabbath comes up, it seems like it's almost like a Hagar Roth thing where like instantly someone wants to talk about whether you like Dio or Ozzy. And I just feel like whoever you heard first is who you're going to like, and and actually I didn't even think about that. Diary of a Madman is the very first thing I ever heard from Ozzy. Right. Because my cousin had it and we all had to hide it from our parents because of the cover art and everything,
yes.
Because of how Ozzy was known at the time. But it was years later, my sister played that 7-inch for me and she was like, do you know who this is? I'm like, no. She's like, this is the guy like that you were, listening to. You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, he was in a whole band before that. So anyways, a lot of Black Sabbath for me. I'll put a bunch on the playlist. And then, probably the most commercial rock in the history of commercial rock, the most arena of all arena rock, Journey, which actually came about because, again, to me, this is uncommon, but I was in public. I was in the grocery store the other day and heard Oh Sherry, the Steve Perry solo cut.
Right.
And yes, I know it's a Steve Perry solo cut, but who are we kidding? That Steve was trying to see if the money would split better one way. And that is absolutely a Journey song.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like on there behind the music when they talk about that and they're like, yeah, well, Steve told us he wanted to do something different. And then Jonathan Cain goes, and then I heard O'Sherry on the radio and I was like, when are you going to do something different? You know?
Right.
But anyways, because of that, and I love that song, Oh Sherry, because of that, I listened to Foolish Heart. And then I get Escape, Frontiers, Raised on Radio, that whole era. Geez, I know all about the history. I know about Greg Rowley. I know what a different band it was before Steve Perry. I have nothing against any of that music. However, you put on some super echoey drums, throw some piano at that, and some formulaic lyrics, and I am in.
Well, it was Steve Perry basically that saved Journey. They had the record company give him one more shot, and when they replaced him as a singer is when they took off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am here for it. And it probably also helps that I was like 7 when Escape came out. So, you know, when you're 7 and you see Journey on MTV, you're like, I think those might be the coolest people I've ever seen in my life. You know, like now you look back on the Separate Ways video and you're like, oh no,
that's a bad video. Yeah. Good song, but bad video.
You know, a video I love from that era though, that I think stands up is the video for Faithfully. Like, I think it shows, it literally shows, you're like, damn, that job would suck. You know, like they really look like exhausted and we put a lot of work into this. And that's Faithfully's always been one of my favorite Journey songs anyways. I know people love Open Arms, but Faithfully is my jam. So
yeah, I'm over Wheel in the Sky. I love that track.
Oh, what a great cut. But yeah, so my 2 Jamie Jams this week were bands that in 1982, I bet fans of either band wouldn't be caught dead listening to the other one. You know,
well, actually in my house, we both had Ozzy and Sabbath and Journey. So, you know,
no, me too. Yeah. I'm talking about like the cool teenage kids, you know?
Oh yeah. You're right. I was definitely not the cool kid. No.
It's like when Nirvana broke, the people at the time wouldn't have been caught dead listening to Warrant, but nowadays somebody will listen to either. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
I agree.
So anyways, those are my Jammy Jams. Again, shout out to the guys from the Itch. I have to go first on Jammy Jams now, so I don't forget to do my own Jammy Jams. What have you been listening to, brother?
Okay, so mine isn't as diverse as it was last time, and I promised to spare people the Christmas music I have been listening to because I do enjoy some Christmas music.
People or me, according to your tweet.
I wasn't going to bring that track up, I promise. So Megadeth dropped a new album a couple months ago, and I've been hitting that hard recently. It is a great album. It's a very solid effort for a band that's been around for a very long time and has been pretty consistent all the way through. There's only one track on the whole thing I'm not a fan of, but the 2 tracks that really stick out and ones I've been hitting hard, one's called The Dogs of Chernobyl. It opens very differently than the rest of the album. It does actually have a swing to it, which is kind of unusual to say when you're talking about, you know, a speed metal band. Right. There's a nice variety going on in that track. And there's actually some melody at the very beginning, which is kind of unusual. But man, once it kicks in, it does go full speed and it's very, very cool.
Nice.
So that's the one of the 2 tracks. The other one actually features a bit in there from Ice-T. He guests on the album. It's called Night Stalkers. And this song is just awesome. It's my favorite track on there. There's some really cool tempo changes, some, you know, nice, you know, shifting and different progressions, but it has the best guitar riff on the entire album. And if you listen to that track, you'll instantly know which one I'm talking about. It is freaking awesome. So those are the 2.
I heard good buzz on that record when it came out. Yes. And I was big into Megadeth around like Countdown to Extinction, Euthanasia.
Great record.
Right. And the only time I ever I saw him on the Cryptic Writings tour too. But I saw him on the Countdown and Euthanasia tours.
Right.
And but like I'm also big into it makes me sound super old, but like early 90s rap and whatnot. So like how I missed that Ice Cube was on a Megadeth track is beyond me, but that's why we do this segment. I'm super excited to know about it now.
Well, it's the cool thing is I have actually seen them. I saw them on the So Far So Good So What tour when they're opening for Iron Maiden. And then I didn't see them for a long time. And in the last 10 years, I've probably seen them 4 or 5 times. So they still put on a great show live. So,
right on.
And it's a great album. It's nice to know that even, you know, 30 plus years later, they can still put out something that really jams. Yeah. So my other ones are kind of Christmas adjacent. So bear with me. Our recent episode, we actually covered Lost Christmas Eve from the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Now, TSO was formed by the producer Paul O'Neill and members of the band Sabotage,
Right.
A Florida band, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. So I went back and revisited their catalog, and because I was a fan of them, I actually saw them a couple times in concert back in the late '80s. Great guys. We met them. We're talking Star Trek and all kinds of other nerdy stuff. They're nice guys. So a couple tracks that really always resonate with me. One off the album Gutter Ballet is called "When the Crowds Are Gone." It is a great hard rock ballad that's not a love song. It's basically examining what happens to the artist when the fans aren't there anymore.
Okay.
You know, and how it affects them. So it's a great song, really, really powerful. And then off their Streets, a rock opera, the title track Streets is great. It sets up the whole rest of the album, and it's a fantastic opener. It's just a really solid song. And then towards the end of the record, the song Believe, which is another ballad, really beautiful, really emotional, but it's so good. It's one of those tracks that you're like, when it's over, you're like, I got to hear that one again.
Yep.
So, but yeah, When the Crowds Are Gone, Streets, and then Believe are the three really awesome tracks from them I've been listening to hard lately.
Right on. Cool. So that's, yeah. And I like the background on that too. Like people don't really know exactly what TSO is, like how it came about, you know, and it's, you know, like one of my least favorite phrases in all of music discussion is hair metal. It just sounds
I know.
It sounds like such a derogatory term. It's like there are so many insanely talented people from that genre, you know, that never get and especially what a great pick for a song too, because every one of those bands went from arenas and stadium shows to like barely clubs, you know, and
I know.
And it's very few of them handled it well. You know, but
right.
But I like that they were able to at least get some therapy out of it that way. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, and then now it's a huge thing again. You know, 80s hair bands are now huge, and they have cruises and massive tours and festivals. So they're actually, there's a great book called Nothing But a Good Time, which examines that whole era, and they talk to a lot of the bands from that era, and they're saying, you know, we're making more money now than we were then.
Oh
you
yeah,
know, from these concerts and these events. So, but yeah, the funny thing about the TSO is actually on the episode we kind of talk about all the different musicians that have played either on the albums or have been part of the touring bands, and it's like a weird 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's just crazy all the different people. We even linked it to Michael Bolton. So there you go.
Dude, we could go on about this, but there's a cat named Jizzy Pearl from that group of people who's been in like every band. Like he's been in like every band from that era. He's done something for, like he's been a touring member of. You could connect almost that whole community from that one guy. And
I'll look that up.
And then John Corabi is the same way. He's famous for Crew, but he's been in so many different bands, like supporting, in some way, shape, or form. And the other thing too, when you mentioned the 80s crews, I have a very good friend of mine actually fronts a 80s tribute band called Sunset Boulevard. And as you might imagine, as a matter of fact, I kid you not, like a half hour before we went on to record tonight, he sent me a video of them rehearsing I Saw Red by Warren last night.
Okay, cool.
And but they just got picked to go on. I think there's a thing just called that 80s cruise or something like that. Nice. And they just got picked to go on that cruise.
Oh, that's awesome.
As entertainment. So, but yeah, they do all of that stuff. And it's great. It works out for me because I love that music then and I love it now. So, So those were our Jammy Jams. We always have the playlist that will come out every Monday along with the episode. So when you're done listening to this episode, if you want to hear all this music that Dayton and I were talking so passionately about, you can go to Spotify and look for the Infectious Groove podcast playlist, and all of the music will be right there for you. Speaking of music that we love, we are going to take a break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about what in the heck is going on with all of the music that we love and why is it being sold off all the time? What is happening here? That is what we're going to get into. So we're going to take a quick break and be right back. You are listening to the Infectious Groove Podcast on the Odd Pods Media Network.
Hi, I'm Sam.
I'm Richie.
I'm Little Matt.
And here in the 500 Section Lounge, we are three dads who host a family-friendly weekly podcast.
Yep, we laugh, we go on tangents, and we talk to great guests.
Tangents?
I don't know what you're talking about with that. You know, their gas is leaking.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, we have legendary conversations from sports to history and everything in between.
So be on the lookout for what we do next.
And always be there to
Grab a listen.
Once upon a time.
Boring.
It was the best of times. It was the worst.
You got that right.
What's your problem?
We want new stories.
Hi, it's Frankie.
And Garrett. And we host the Ever Trending Story, a weekly podcast where we bring to life a fictional story created by our own minds and some of the hottest, craziest trends from the internet.
Find us wherever you download podcasts, and be sure to join the fun on social media at EverTrendingPod.
Welcome back. My name is Russ, and I am joined by Dayton of the Docking Bay 77 podcast, and you are listening to the post-winter event, post-Christmas episode of the Infectious Groove Podcast. And we are going to talk about something that I feel like has been going on en masse for at least a couple of years now, like maybe about 2 or 3 years now. Now, we can touch on this too. This is not like something that has just come about. This selling off of your catalog or your publishing rights is something that has happened over time.
Right.
Of course, I'm a big GNR fan, and back in like 2006 or 2007, Axl Rose sold the publishing rights to GNR's music back then. And I remember everybody in the GNR community, like it was something that no one had really heard of,
right?
You know, but it's happened before. And a lot of times too, throughout history, famously, people like Prince, Little Richard, James Brown, these guys didn't own the rights to their music. Some corporation did, right? So a lot of times when it's changed hands in the past, we've never really heard about it because it wasn't the artist in charge of it, right?
Right.
So nowadays, what I feel like has been happening, at least for the past 3 years, is not only is it happening all the time, but it seems to be huge names.
Yes.
You know, I mean, when you wake up to a Google alert that about Bob Dylan with his advanced age, you figure, oh no, we lost Bob. You know,
right?
Nope. Turns out he just sold off the rights to his entire catalog. You know,
right. Well, I looked up that and I couldn't believe the names because obviously we're all familiar with what happened to Taylor Swift and that stuff being sold from out underneath her, and then of course we went back and did all of her records again. But I started looking up. I was like Bruce Springsteen, Bob Marley, Motley Crue, John Lennon, Paul Simon, Genesis, the Chili Peppers, Sting. I was like, oh my God, how did I miss any of this? You know what I mean? It was just, I could not believe it.
So I'm glad you have that list handy because I didn't get that list, but I should have.
Oh, there's more. I could keep going. It was ridiculous.
Well, just some of the ones that you mentioned there, like for me, and again, it's been made clear to me on the show that I'm an old, but like Paul Simon is one of the most prolific songwriters in the history. Like,
God, yes.
If you go just by the Simon and Garfunkel LPs before you worry about Paul's solo work, that guy has written some of the most amazing lyrics of the past 100 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's astounding to me. I think a couple others that you mentioned, like and we'll get into this more, but like the Chili Peppers, they're not an advanced age. You know, like I don't understand all of a sudden doing that. Did you say Sting and or the Police in there?
Yeah, and, it was Sting, Twisted Sister. Let's see, people from members of Fleetwood Mac, Journey, Huey Lewis and the News, Joey Ramone, Neil Young, David Crosby, Richie Sambora, Blondie. I mean, it's insane. You know,
we'll get into this more, but that's funny that you mentioned Twisted Sister because there is a convenience store or something down here in Jacksonville that has a buy a coffee, you could win a car or something. And their commercial goes, I want to win.
Oh,
I want to win. Right. God bless my fiance. Every time that commercial plays, I turn the TV down and rant about, well, you know why this happened, right? This happened because the rights got sold, you know? And she's like, yes, dear, I know. She's like, I run a music podcast as well. I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Well, see, this whole thing, I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then I was also old enough to remember when the Nike ad with Revolution playing came on and I just about died.
Yep.
So yeah,
Everyone did. You remember?
Oh, yeah,
dude,
it was crazy.
That was like earth shaking when that revolution had happened. And for those listening that may not know, because, I'm an old.
Yes, me too.
This was back in an era where you wouldn't use your song to sell a product to save your life. That was like the last thing you would ever do. And then all of a sudden, Paul McCartney gave Michael Jackson the advice to go buy song rights because you can make a lot of money with that. And Michael Jackson said, that's cool. Hey, whose I'll buy is yours. And then he did. And it cut to the slower version of, I think it was the slower version of Revolution. Anyways, Revolution ended up in a Nike commercial. And like you say, everybody of our era just was like, what? The Beatles absolutely are not here to sell tennis shoes.
Right. And even recent years, I've heard so many Queen songs used in commercials, and I'm like, what? What's going on there?
Dude, we talked in the first half of the episode about how we had to hide, or in my house, we had to hide Diary of a Madman, right? Right. Have you seen that car commercial over the last couple of years where the family is singing Crazy Train together as a sing-along?
It's kind of fantastic at the same time, though. You know what I mean?
No, it is. It is. And we'll get into that. I don't, so far, it sounds like I'm just sitting here shaking my fist at the sky. And I'm like, if you would have told me in 1982 that in, 40 years from then, I'm going to see a car commercial where a family, including children, are singing Crazy Train, I would have been like, well, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Right.
Like, no way. But then I think it also has to do with how fans perceive, you mentioned Rush earlier. Yeah. Rush has always been a little club. And I say little club because I am aware of how many records Rush has sold and how many people they've played in front of. I myself have seen Rush 4 or 5 times in concert. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah. I've seen him a few times. Yeah.
But when you're a Rush fan, you feel like you're in a little club.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
If a Rush fan turned on, I don't know, some sort of commercial about like work boots and they played the Working Man riff, Rush fans their heads would collectively explode.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's part of it, that there's certain artists, like when I actually hear that Led Zeppelin sells the rights, then that's a sign of the apocalypse because they are uber protective of their songs. Look at the movie Wayne's World. There's that joke when they're in the music store. Hey, no, don't play Stairway to Heaven. The joke is they didn't get the rights to use the song.
Right.
And they said no. So that's why when you hear a Zeppelin song in a movie, that matters because they were like, okay, yeah, that's okay. Because they've done it so very few times.
This could not be, well, no, it's not off topic. Have you seen the film Silver Linings Playbook?
Many times.
Okay.
Love that movie.
Me too. What you're saying about Zeppelin hits home with me because there's a scene in the film where Bradley Cooper is very much having a mental breakdown and he ends up taking physical action against his parents. You know the scene I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
And they're playing the slide solo from What Is and What Should Never Be.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
And exactly what you just said, like that is a thing where they were like, okay, this fits what's happening in this scene. And it's not to sell copies of Led Zeppelin 2.
Right.
So yes. Now, and you know what bums me out is I've heard recently big rumblings of a huge Pink Floyd sale in the works. And
I actually read about that. I read about that. And but what makes it funny is that it's infighting on the details that it hasn't happened. So wait. Let
me understand this correctly. You're trying to tell me that the members of Pink Floyd can't agree on something?
I know. Amazing, right?
That's okay. I'm not, I'm still going to endorse your show, but that's wild. I've never heard that before. But
yeah,
but back to the point of what you said though, Pink Floyd has always been fiercely protective of how and when their music has been used. I'll give you an example. Pink Floyd's music has only ever been used up till now. Apparently these days, I have to say, as of the recording of this episode,
right?
Pink Floyd's music has only ever been used in one television commercial ever. It was for, I swear to you, everything I'm about to say to you is true. It was used for a toilet bowl cleaner, and it was the song The Great Gig in the Sky. And if you've ever seen Pink Floyd in concert, when that song plays on the circular screen, they have all the waves in the ocean in slow motion. And the company recreated that, but with a toilet bowl and the swirling blue water.
Oh my God.
And they used The Great Gig in the Sky without permission.
Oh, geez.
and then quickly got a lesson in copyrights from the lawyers at EMI from
I'm sure of that, man.
And that's like the one time in the inception of the band that anybody's even you don't hear Pink Floyd songs in movies. You don't hear them in commercials.
No.
And it's not that they don't fit, man. Any movie's been made about the kid in the 80s. Some kid was listening to Pink Floyd in the 80s, but kids in movies never are, right? So it's astounding to me that, and Roger Waters is one of my favorite, if not my favorite songwriter of all time. And I'm just like, what? So having said that, we'll get into the questions that I feel are important to this topic, and we'll work through them. And I feel like the discussion we had at the top is a very good setup for the first question. And I'll just ask you this flat out and we'll talk through it.
All right.
Why do you think this is happening now? Like, why all of a sudden is this happening? I feel like the list you gave me validates using the term en masse. This is happening en masse.
Well, from what I was gathering and from the multiple articles I read, a big part of that started it was the pandemic, because touring was shut down. And a lot of these artists, their main flow of income comes from shows and the merch sold at those shows. And when that stopped, they had to find other ways, which is one of the reasons why Springsteen did it, because he wasn't touring. And so for everything I read, that was kind of a starting off point for a lot of them. And I think the other aspect of it is that almost everybody I mentioned, they're aging out. Let's be honest. They're not 30, 40 years old anymore. They're 70s,
Right.
looking down the barrel of retirement and, and then leaving this world. So they're getting their affairs in order is what it looks like to me.
So, and first of all, I agree with that, the touring got cut off, and I understand that nowadays that's really how any musician can make money.
Absolutely.
But for the names that you had on that list, my immediate question is, how much money do you need?
Well,
I mean, we're not like I don't care how poorly someone's money was managed. If you're Paul Simon, there's no way you need money. There's just no way.
Well, thinking about that, because we all know how little artists make from streaming.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
So the record sales are not really there anymore. I mean, granted, our vinyl collections show that people are still buying it, whatever. And I see more and more places picking up CDs again. But, royalties, I mean, how many of us consistently listen to the radio anymore?
Right.
So, so their revenue streams are not like they used to be. And you're right. These guys, probably don't need the money, but at some point their families are going to inherit whatever they have. And ultimately it's easier to split money than a catalog of music.
Right. No. And and I do agree with that. I just, and the story's not the same for every musician either. Like we talked about earlier, with what happened with Motown Records and there's been a ton of those too, even in the more modern era, TLC, the early Destiny's Child days. You mentioned what happened with Taylor Swift,
Right.
This isn't like artists are always in the driver's seat on things. And I do understand that, but what I'm talking about is the big, huge ones that I'm just like, what, why? But I do understand that from a legacy plan, or like an estate planning standpoint. Right. I mean, you need look no further than Prince, who,
absolutely,
passed without a will. And to say that the way his legacy has been handled since he passed is a mess would be an understatement.
Well, look at Hendrix, died very young, and his family has, I'm not going to be upset about them reissuing stuff, but they've been slapping his name on some ridiculous things.
Yeah.
So I think this is a way to maybe secure how their legacy goes on.
And I hope that that's built into some of these agreements. Right. Like I hope that, I'm not even going to reach for the puns here, but you know what I mean? I'm hoping that, Dylan has in these contracts, like, you can use, because obviously I think if you're the corporation buying these songs, there's a reason it's so that you can put them in movies or TV shows or commercials. But I would hope that there is some sort of verbiage in there regarding how and when things could be used.
Right.
you know.
Well, I did read that a lot of these deals are very different. Like one of them was just the catalog, or that one was just the publishing rights. One was like it's not they're very, I think they varied a lot depending on the artist and what they're willing, and some were only partially giving up part of their, their catalog as prior to this date, and everything after still belongs to them.
Yeah.
So I really think it varies greatly on the artist and what they're trying to get out of it.
So I feel like we're probably going to be on the same page on this next point, but
all right,
I think it's worth thinking about. Do you think that this type of thing could be a good thing for certain artists and certain albums? And the three examples that fly into my mind real quick, even though I'm not a huge fan of the first one, but like the Eagles, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin,
okay.
Yeah, they sell Led Zeppelin t-shirts at Target now, and everybody knows who Zeppelin is, but what about in 20 years from now, 30 years from now? Like, are people still going to know who Led Zeppelin is and what they did? Same thing for Pink Floyd and whomever, again, right. Back to Paul Simon, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I would imagine today, if anybody under the age of 30 has heard of Paul Simon, it's because they heard You Can Call Me Al. Like, they probably don't even know. You know what I mean? And I love that song. I love that record, but like, they probably don't know about Bridge Over Troubled Water and Feeling Groovy and If I Could and Mrs. Robinson. I mean, the list goes on, right? And you could say this for every one of the artists. So I feel like, yeah, there's a positive side to it. If this stuff that's been protected for so long can be used in new and engaging ways that will get not even younger people, more people to hear it, right? I mean, do you, or even, this is probably going out on a limb, but maybe even start to influence a new generation, right? Like, because we've had, decades of people who will say, oh, I only picked up a guitar because of Joe Walsh, or I only play keyboards because I heard Pink Floyd. Well, maybe this stuff will reinvigorate another generation.
Yeah. And what I don't want to see is multiple commercials. Like, I don't want to see like 5 commercials with David Bowie songs in it. You know what I mean? Over the course of a year.
Right.
So how it's handled really matters. But ultimately, if it gets more people to hear the music, I mean, look at what Stranger Things has done with 80s songs. There's like, Kate Bush had a resurgence, and that she all of a sudden was like spiking on all these streaming services, and same with of course, Master of Puppets for Metallica. Mm-hmm. So if it gets more music into more ears, then yes, I think ultimately it's a positive thing. It just really matters on how it's used is what it really comes down to. And to be fair, it's not like we haven't had Suspect songs used in really stupid ways.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to happen regardless. But when my 19-year-old daughter, who I consider has had a pretty good musical education between my wife and I mean, when she was 4 years old, she could recognize Rob Thomas's voice when we were out at stores. Just by if a Matchbox 20 song came on, she's like, she knew who it was. But still, there's stuff, she's a teen. I don't want to listen to your old person music. But if she's hearing something on a show she's watching, that's a good thing.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Then it's not. It's like you can't, your kid has to have their own ideas, so you kind of have to find a way to suggest to them to make it their idea. Right. Same thing there. And when you said, I don't want to hear, Bowie in 5 commercials, the day I realized how serious the problem was with Prince's estate was within a year of Prince passing, I heard Let's Go Crazy in a MasterCard commercial.
Yes.
As in like, let's go nuts and buy everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, Prince would die if he knew that song had been used that way. Like I can't think of a commercial use where that cat would want that song in a commercial, let alone that, So that's why I'm hoping what you'd said about how there's, ins and outs to each deal. Right. I'm hoping that there's some foresight on some things like that.
Most of these people have been around long enough, and I think they have good enough lawyers to make sure something like that happens.
I sure hope so. Because we definitely went through this period where holograms were all of a sudden going to be a thing. Where, and I know they're not real holograms, but I'd say that's what everyone calls them. Where we had Dio performed at a event, and Tupac, and Whitney Houston currently has a show in Vegas. That's,
Weird, huh?
Yeah, she's not even there. And that's not even say that can be done well. I always say I saw Elvis in concert because in 1998 or 99, they did a tour with Elvis's full band, like all the same people that played with him, his full band, both of his backup vocal groups, they were all there, and they had big screen in the middle of Elvis from like 70 and 72, and they stripped everything off of the audio except for his vocal, and his band played live, and his vocal was synced up with it. So, and I saw that show at the Palace of Auburn Hills in either 1998 or 1999, and it was sold out. It was an arena show. Elvis Presley sold out the Palace of Auburn Hills like 20 years after he died, you know?
Well, I could see that because honestly, you're still seeing his band. I mean, yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah, it was James Burton, Jerry Sheff, Ronnie Tutt, like it was all the same guys. So and it was cool when Elvis was introducing them too. You know, he's like on lead guitar, it's James Burton. I'm like, yeah, it's James Burton right there. You know, it was really cool. But I would also argue that, you know, Whitney Houston playing Vegas now is a far cry from that. It's quite a different.
Yeah.
No, I love Whitney. That's not a dig at Whitney. I'm saying
no, it's not
the way they're doing the show
you.
is a whole different situation. So I even wonder about that too. If there are people that are like, you will never put a hologram of me on stage, or, you know, like once I'm gone, I'm never performing again. I wonder if that type of thing has been written into some of these contracts.
I could see that. I could see that for sure.
So do you think that going forward, because I feel like maybe the youngest person that I heard you name in that list, I feel like the youngest artist would have been the Chili Peppers, maybe out of that list?
Actually, well, see, I also found a list of people that have been going after them. Includes Five Finger Death Punch, Imagine Dragons, Justin Timberlake, The Killers, The Chainsmokers, so Skrillex. So there's a lot of recent artists too that are making deals and record companies, so these, conglomerates are going after them too.
And that's okay. So do you think that we're going to reach a point where this is part of, okay. So, and again, this is going to be old talk here. There used to be a thing when you got quote unquote signed, you were signed to like a 7-album deal. And part of your record contract would be that you owe the label a hits package and a live album. Right.
Right.
Do you feel like we'll get to a point where this will be the thing too, where they'll go, and also in order to sign this, you know, in order for us to welcome you under the Playtone umbrella of artists, we will never own anything to do with your publishing or your rights.
I mean, I wouldn't put anything past record companies because we know for years they were screwing the artists constantly. So I wouldn't put it past them, but I think ultimately, it might come down to a case-by-case basis, depending on the mileage the record company thinks they can get out of a certain artist.
Yeah. Because
I don't think everybody that is currently putting out music is going to be a legacy act 30 years from now. So, but I would not be surprised that it is, it becomes more commonplace, say, 10 years from now.
Let me say this, and Jesus, we can almost do a whole episode on this. To me, the danger there is you end up with the tail wagging the dog, where the end game then is this a quality artist who might be a legacy act in 30 years? How much toilet bowl cleaner can I sell with their song? You know what I mean? Like where that's the art that will get pushed to the mainstream, is how much can it sell something? Because we own the rights to this, and we would really like for people to keep using this song in commercials. Right.
Yeah. And honestly, I think there's been a little bit of that in over the last 20 years anyway. Mm-hmm. And because I think, record companies and producers are always looking for an angle. They're always looking for ways to make themselves more money, more than the artist. So yeah, I could see that. And to be honest, I mean, yeah, I'm old, but I'm trying to broaden my listening.
Right.
And I just don't feel like there's a lot of artists currently that a record company is going to say, hey, we can use them, long term. And maybe you're right. Maybe they're just trying to look at, the next few years, like, hey, that's a catchy song. We're going to put it in a commercial 2 years after it's been released. So yeah, like I said, I wouldn't put anything past these conglomerates.
I just, when we have elders of our generation always say things like, my uncle didn't fight in that war for you to go out and do that or whatever. I'm always like, Prince did not go through what he did in the 90s for y'all to be doing this with your song rights. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Prince did not walk around with slave on his face and change his name just so you can go all be willy-nilly with your song rights, So I feel like in that respect, I feel like old man yelling at the cloud, So, I mean, here's the question, I guess, and I feel like this is going to be a very age centric question is,
Right.
does this matter to you? And the reason why I say that's age centric is because, and I know many listeners might not remember this, but when that Beatles commercial hit with Revolution in it, it's hard to describe what a shock it was. It wasn't even that we were all mad about it. We were just so surprised. Like we were just like, what,
Right.
So let me ask that version of it first. Do you think that this matters more to folks who have been listening to music much longer than it maybe would to a 20-year-old?
Well, okay. So that's an interesting question because I think it matters to us because for years, especially rock music was so anti-establishment, you know what I mean? And the idea of your stuff being used in commercials and things like that was what people would call selling out.
Right.
So yeah, and I can tell you after that Revolution Nike commercial, I didn't buy Nikes, like I don't think ever again.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I mean, I know my daughter is a huge Taylor Swift fan. So when that happened to her, she was pissed, and so of course we had to go get the Taylor versions, which is fine. And that's fine. We bought multiple copies, of her.
I was going to say, did you buy all 15 colors of every one?
We got a few. She didn't want the vinyl too, so that made me happy. I almost cried. I think what it comes down to is, yes, I think it means more to us just because a lot of these artists are people we grew up listening to. And I think with younger people, maybe it's a little bit not as offensive. I think they're more worried about other things than music rights. And as long as they get to stream it, I think that's all they really care about.
For sure. I hear that. And there was a time I was the same way when the Beatles thing happened. I was like, what the hell? And then, I can't think of specific examples, but I know there were times during the 90s that I was like, really? Like when I heard so-and-so song in the commercial or whatever.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, there are whole artists in the past 20 years that I've got turned onto by hearing their music for the first time in a commercial. The one example that always flies into my head is the first time I ever heard of the band Fun was We Are Young was in a Microsoft commercial. And I didn't run out and buy the new copy of Windows, but I was like, God, that song is really catchy. and I bought the album Some Nights on the basis of that. And Some Nights is one of my favorite records I've heard in the past 20 years. And I wouldn't have heard
I heard
that.
Some Nights because of the trailer for Wreck-It Ralph, because it was in that.
Oh, right on.
So that's how I heard it, so.
But I mean, same thing,
Right.
Like that's how you're hearing it. So here's my answer to that. Like I will be really mad on a case by case basis, I guess. Is what I mean.
I see that completely. Yes.
Yeah. And I know I talked about that real example with Great Gig in the Sky earlier, but if I see some sort of insurance company using Great Gig in the Sky, I'm going to be mad. You know what I mean? Like knock it off, but if I see like, I don't know, some skydiving company or whatever else, like using or an excursions company or whatever else using like In the Flesh as a way to be like, show how exhilarating what they're doing is, you know what I mean? Or like, then that to me is like a more, okay, cool. Like not only is that close to what the song is about in the first place, like, you know what I mean? Like having new experiences and all that, but it's also could get someone who's not even interested in that product to be like, well, that song was rad,
Right.
And ultimately I want more art from the artists that I love. Okay. And so who knows if even some of these deals were struck for that reason? Like, there could be an artist like Prince famously, the reason why he wanted to get out of his Warner Brothers contract was because they were restricting how much music they would let him release. And he was sitting on, I mean, the man released 39 studio records from between his first record and when he passed away.
Jeez.
Who knows if there's even people like, what if Paul Simon's sitting on a bunch of stuff and is like, hey, you can have the rights to all this if I get to release that or whatever. Like, so as long as that's what these guys are going to do with these deals, then if we get more great art from great artists out of this, great,
Yes.
So there can be so many plus sides to it. I guess I am pre-upset about the misuses that I know are going to happen. They're, you know what I mean? I just, I feel like we are, as cool as that Crazy Train commercial is, we are going to see awful misuse of Ozzy and or Black Sabbath's music.
Well, I think that's going to be inevitable no matter what, because even if it's just one song here, one song there, yeah. Honestly, what I would rather see is more of these songs in movies than TV commercials. So, because for me, like we mentioned Zeppelin earlier, in Ragnarok, when the Immigrant Song comes on, that is such a amazingly perfect use of that song and that scene. And because of that movie, my daughter started listening to Zeppelin. So you know what? If that gets people to listen to more music, then sure. And I will take the occasional bad commercial if it gets more people listening to good music.
Yeah. And that's a very fair take too. You are less yelling at the cloud than I am.
I do enough for that other times. So.
Right. Yeah. And I will say too, one thing you said about like movies and TV is even in TV over the past year, I've noticed a huge increase of songs that if this was 20 years ago, I would have said, Jesus, they must have paid so much to get that song. And now it's like, and like you said, even there was recently on Netflix, Wednesday was the big thing that would, and a song by The Cramps started trending. I'll take that. I'm not even a fan of The Cramps. I'm just a fan of something different all of a sudden was trending.
Well, and I remember, okay, so I worked at a grocery store in the early 90s when I was in college, and we had Muzak, really bad versions of great songs that made me cry. Okay. Yep. Well, now, like you mentioned, you heard these songs. I've heard Metallica in a shop, in a grocery store.
Yeah.
So I'm cool with that. If this means that I can go shopping to some of the music I truly love and hear the actual version and not horrible Muzak versions, then that's still a positive thing.
Yeah. No, yes. And to be honest, we're nearing the end of the discussion here. And this is on me, not you. I was expecting this episode to be a lot of, and here's another thing I don't like. But to be honest, through the course of this conversation, you've brought up a lot of points where I'm like, that could be, and as much as things like this can irritate people who love art,
right?
I try hard to look at the bright side of things or how things could go, like how things could be good, right? And you're the Kate Bush example in Master Puppets, fantastic example. If one kid picks up a guitar and stays with it because of Stranger Things using puppets, then we all win.
Right?
We all win. But then let's go crazy in a MasterCard commercial, though.
Yeah, I know. It's, like 6 of one, half dozen of the other, man. So
I assure you nothing came good of that. Like not one person was like, oh, what's this Let's Go Crazy song? Like nobody did that. And no one, I'm sure, applied for a MasterCard because of that commercial, So that's just a loss all the way across the board. But yeah, I really do. I appreciate this discussion because I think that you came into it maybe even with more, I came into this hoping we would find something positive in the discussion. Right. And I think you came at it with like, no, I've got a bunch of positive things we can talk about. So it worked out great for me. Having said that, by the time this episode comes out, like I say, the great weather event will have passed. Christmas will have passed because this will be out the Monday, the day after Christmas. And so since this episode is being recorded on a Thursday night, who knows? There could be some earth-shaking announcements in the coming days of people we discussed on this episode. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow's the day that they announce Zeppelin sold their catalog, or
maybe finally the guys at Pink Floyd can agree on something.
Well, I didn't. Look, I know in your neck of the woods, it sounds like hell's going to freeze over in the next couple of days, but I assure you, you're talking about Pink Floyd, the band that had their album Animals remixed, remastered, and ready to be released in 2018. And then it came out 4 years later in 2022. And it's still legally called the Animals 2018 remix, even though it was released 4 years later, all because they couldn't agree on what was going in the booklet.
Yeah,
you guys recorded this,
and I'm still trying to get a copy of that. So every store I've gone to has been out. I'm like,
have you even streamed it? The Animals?
No, I haven't.
Dude,
I want to hear it on. I want to hear the needle drop. I want to hear it on vinyl.
Dude, it's worth the wait.
Yeah,
if you like Animals even a little bit, you're about to. You're going to hear it again for the first time.
Yeah, we covered that last year, and so that was a recent acquisition for me. I only bought that a couple of years ago, and I sat down and listened to it, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" So I really want to hear the new version of it.
Yes, sir. So having said that, this discussion has been brought to you in part by a generous grant from the from the Docking Bay 77 podcast. Dayton has been, as I said at the show, a big supporter of our show. At the top of the show, rather, a big supporter of our show. He's always giving us good feedback. I went on his show. He's been on here before, but this episode that you're hearing now, there were forces at work against us in the past couple of weeks, but everything, I'm so excited that even with impending doom by the way of the storm and everything, we were able to get this out of the way. So if you listen to this episode and you like anything that you heard Dayton have to say, and you like other pieces of art like movies and video games, and did you guys cover video games at all or no?
We did a top 7 arcade games we'd have in our basement.
Okay.
So we did do that. So we try to hit a lot of different stuff, but
Right on. So if you like more than just music talk, I can't recommend enough you go check out the Docking Bay podcast. And they just, if somebody goes to any podcast platform, they can just
we're streaming everywhere.
Docking Bay and look it up. Give them a subscription and check out their episodes. And I would assume eventually I will come popping up on their show again. They'll come up over here, or who knows, maybe we'll all do commercials together. Maybe we'll just sell the rights to both of our shows and just start doing commercials,
Sounds good to me.
You never know.
That's the dream.
Yeah. I just got done speaking hypocritically for 40 minutes. And now I'm going to be like, hey, who wants to pay me for the rights to this? Next week on the program, this has been a running thing on our show for the past couple of years. It's one of the most entertaining Michelle episodes that money can buy. We're going to do our Spotify Wrapped, which if you've listened to any of our Spotify Wrapped episodes, you know that Michelle doesn't believe in robots. She is convinced that the world is out to get her. And Michelle does this show every time she is on this program. She does this show with, I'd say, about 5 minutes of prep. And she has already been taking notes about things that she's mad with her Spotify Wrapped.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is going to be a big one. And in addition to that, another of our favorites on the show, longtime supporter and a big contributor as far as feedback goes, our friend Seth is going to be here. And
I'm excited. I am so excited for that.
Yeah. This episode is going to be something. So we have that next week. So that is what's coming up on here. Having said that, even though when by the time you hear this, it will be yesterday. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, Happy whatever you celebrate. If it's just Monday and you're super excited about Monday, Happy Monday to you. From Dayton at Docking Bay and from myself here at the Infectious Groove Podcast, like we always say, without music, life would be a mistake. Bye.
Bye.
The Infectious Groove Podcast is hosted by Russ Robinson, Kyle Wimple, and Michelle Koselecki. Produced and edited by Russ Robinson. Intro and outro music composed by Chris Kimmel. Recorded with a Rode Podcaster Pro and Rode Pod mics.